There once was a cave girl called Katy. Well, actually, her name was Ugg, but Katy was a far prettier name, and Katy was a pretty cave girl. You know, monobrow, hairy arms, most of her teeth, everything a shallow cave boy should be looking for. Except Katy was a geek. But what did she geek out about? She couldn't exactly catch 'em all. It's hard to obsess over cars before the wheeler's been invented. Star Wars might have been a long, long time ago, but it was in a galaxy far, far away. No, Katy loved dinosaurs. She loved their power, she loved their size, she loved the fact that T-Rexes were giant killing machines and yet they couldn't scratch their noses. She loved the fact that the Ankylosaurus, a predominantly herbivorous beast, still felt it necessary to have a club for a tail, just in case it changed its mind. She would blow her top for a Triceratops. She would go diplodopy for a Diplodocus. There was just one problem. As all little cave boys and little cave girls know, dinosaurs don't exist. They were just made up by cave parents to scare their cave children into eating cave Brussels sprouts. And so all the cave boys used to tease Katy for believing in them. There goes Katy! She believes in dinosaurs! There goes Katy's! She thinks lizards could be as tall as skyscrapers, whatever they are. There goes Katy! Her belief system disagrees with mine, and therefore I inherently mistrust her. As we all know, cavemen were from the West Country. Eventually, Katy had had enough. Like an exasperated Agent Mulder as Agent Scully once again declared there was no such thing as aliens, she knew they existed. Like Bill Murray being fired from his university placement because ghosts don't exist, she was going to prove them wrong. And like Samuel L. Jackson going to turn on the generators on Jurassic Park, Katy was going to find a dinosaur. Unlike the Go Compare adverts, these torturous similes are going to stop before they get annoying. And so she set off across the world in search of her prized lizard. She navigated the forest of paper cuts, climbed up the mountain of stray plugs and Lego pieces. She swam across the sea of uncomfortably high chlorine concentration. But it was no use. Wherever she went, there was no trace that dinosaurs were nearby. You see, unlike what you might have learnt from the Flintstones, dinosaurs and humans never coexisted, probably due to a difference of opinion, that opinion being who wants to eat who. Katy gave up. Perhaps the others were right. Perhaps there is no such thing as dinosaurs. I mean, the whole idea was kind of ridiculous. What next? Google? She chuckled to herself and sat down. But just then she noticed what she was sitting on, probably because prior to that she wasn't sitting on anything, so to notice something she was sitting on whilst not actually being seated is somewhat of a paradox. Beneath her lied not the mundane rock she thought it was when she had chosen it as a perch for her posterior. No, this rock was the perfect replica of a dinosaur's head. A T-Rex, her paleontological mind informed her. She began to dig around, looking for other rocks just like it. She pulled up hips and ribs and toes. Before she knew it, she had a whole body made of stone. She had become the world's first archaeologist. The only job in the world that largely involves just digging up rocks and pointing at them. That's not fair. Geologists also come into this category. Elated, she ran at top speed back to her village, but then she remembered it was quite a way away, so she just slowed down to a brisk walk instead. When she returned to the village, their greeting was not the warmest. There goes Katy's. My aforementioned feelings towards her have not changed. No, listen, dinosaurs do exist, and I can prove it. The whole village fell silent. You could have heard a pin being invented. Come with me and I'll show you. A ripple went through the crowd like a fat man being poked as one by one they got up to go with her. She led them through the forest of paper cuts, over the mountain of stray plugs and Lego pieces, across the sea of uncomfortably high chlorine concentration. As it turns out, the dinosaur fossil was nowhere near these places, but the villagers had been really quite mean to Katy. Eventually they reached the T-Rex. Once again silence fell across them. You could have heard the newly invented pin being dropped for the first time. No one spoke a word for what seemed like hours. But then one little boy from the back piped up. That's not a dinosaur. That's a rock. Katy's stupid. No, 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 it's a dinosaur from years and years ago. It is clearly a rock, said the first ever geologist. How do we know you didn't carve it yourself? This is the Stone Age after all. If there's one thing we can do, it is carve stone. No, wait, please, Katy started, but it was too late. The village was already leaving. Before long, she was on her own with only a T-Rex for company, and they're not the best conversationalists. She sat on the back of her new friend and started to sob. I'd love to say that as her tears fell upon its body, it imbued it with magical powers. It was brought to life and she rode it to the village, and all the villagers cowered in fear as she rode through on a truly mighty steed. There goes Katy! We should have believed in her! There goes Katy! She was right all along! There goes Katy! I wish she'd be my friend! But it would be too late, and she'd ride off to find another village with friends like her who rode dinosaurs wherever they went, and she'd be happy for the rest of her life. I'd love to say that. But when the droplets fell onto the dinosaur's fossil, nothing happened but a splash, and Katy realised she'd never find a village like that. So she got up and she headed home. The next few weeks would have been hell for a lesser cave girl. Every insult, every averted gaze, every snigger behind her back would have cut like a slightly sharpened flint. But not for Katy. She knew she was right, so she smiled and their words bounced off her, like her skin was made of a material that would make slightly sharpened flint bounce off it. Over time the village calmed down. They found other things to laugh about, like how John had proposed a ridiculous offside rule for their game of foot and ball, or this silly writing thing, it'll never catch on. And so Katy grew up, and she found love. But secretly she never forgot how she was right about dinosaurs. She never forgot about her friend. So after many years, she decided to pay him one last visit. She left her children and her grandchildren for one final journey, and when she reached her destination, she hobbled onto its back like she had done all those years ago. She smiled, happy with her life. And in thousands of years' time, paleontologists would dig up Katy on her dinosaur, and she would confuse their studies for the rest of time as the girl who lived with dinosaurs.